mode.
Greetings and welcome to the latest episode of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association webinar series. My name is John Ruzek, and I'm the Senior Director of Alumni Networks for the University of Minnesota Alumni Association. Thank you to all the alumni and friends who have made time to join us live today. So excited about this webinar. The topic is something that as we were laying out these webinar topics, was something we definitely wanted to cover, and I think we have a great alumna joining us today to talk about it. So are you at a midpoint in your career and not feeling the passion you used to feel at work? Is your job good but not great? So we're really happy that you're glad that you've joined us for the webinar, Navigating the Mid-Career Years, with career coach and alumna Leslie Mulder. The focus of the webinar will be on how to discover your path and the essential pre-work for a successful career transition prior to starting a job. And we hope by the end of today's webinar, we will have removed the mystery of figuring out what's next so you can create your own roadmap to get there. Today's webinar is part of a new free series being offered by the University of Minnesota Alumni Association, where we're having conversations with experts about career, life, and learning topics. This webinar is being recorded today, so it will be available to view on our website at minnesotaalumni.org/alumni webinar series. Just give us a few business days to post it on our website, and we'll also send out a reminder email to those who are joining us today. And if you're on Twitter right now, I know many of you do tweet. Tweet at us with the hashtag UMNWebinar. We'd love to hear from you, and maybe as time permits, maybe shoot you a tweet back. So before we get started, let's just go over a few items on participating in today's webinar. You have joined the presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. If you'd prefer to listen over the telephone, just select telephone in the audio pane of your GoToWebinar panel, and dial-in information will be displayed. If you experience audio difficulties while listening via your computer speakers, this can be caused by having multiple applications open, which can use up your computer's bandwidth. So feel free to close any unnecessary applications on your computer. Questions are welcome, and you may submit them at any time. You'll see a snapshot here of the question panel. There will be some times during today where we'll be using the question panel to ask for feedback and also to do some self-reflection. So feel free to use that and listen for Leslie's prompts when she's working through some of those self-reflection questions. And it's going to be a fun conversation, and we definitely want to hear from you and your feedback. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our featured speaker, Leslie Mulder. Leslie coaches early and mid-career professionals on career and life transitions and guides adults of all ages around questions of meaning and purpose. Using a holistic perspective and a goal-driven process, she helps people tap into their potential and move toward what really matters in their work and life. From 2008 to 2014, Leslie served as Associate Director of Career Counseling and Alumni Career Consultant for the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan, the Wolverines. Leslie holds an executive coaching certificate from the Weatherhead School of Management at Case Western Reserve University and a Master of Arts in Educational Psychology Counseling from here at the University of Minnesota. And I'm so glad to have Leslie join us today. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you, John. Glad to be here. So this topic is of personal interest. I've certainly hit plateaus and wondered what's next. And certainly this is happening for family, friends, and colleagues across industries. They're in their professional career, but they're not sure how long they wish to last. And as professionals, we're used to being on the moving walkway. We know the formula. You go to a good school, get good grades, get a good job, and the early part of our career, at least in retrospect, seemed pretty straightforward. But now you're there, where you thought you should be, maybe where you didn't expect to be, and you're looking down the barrel of 20 years or more of this, you realize you're not going to spend so many of your waking hours, if you are going to spend so many of your waking hours working, it's time to find a new way to start enjoying it. So for those of you who are joining us today, maybe you've outgrown your job and you're wondering what's next. Maybe you've realized your job isn't a long-term fit and you're interested in a career change. Or perhaps it's just been a while since you took some time to think about what you want or how to take some small steps to develop yourself. And by the way, as a supplement to this webinar, I have written 2 free guides on lesliemulder.com/resources, and I'll mention it again at the end. My goal today is to give you a process around how you can incubate some shifts in your life. It could be tweaking your current work situation, or it could be a full-out career change. And by the way, you don't have to know which right now. I'll spend about 5 minutes at the beginning today introducing you to a framework called the 5 L's that will serve both as an outline for your change process and as an outline for the rest of the webinar. I'll also share a few stories of people who may be a few steps ahead of you in their change process. I hope this gives you hope and more confidence that you can do this for yourself, whether it's create a more fun path, a more successful path, a more secure path, a more meaningful path, whichever resonates for you. We'll also engage you in some active reflection 3 or 4 times during this hour. I'll give you polls and also prompts for written reflection. So even at the end of the hour, hopefully you'll feel like we've moved the needle. So let's get started with the 5 L's. As I mentioned earlier, it's a framework I developed to help with career and life transitions. The first phase is called Look Deep. It's really about being honest with yourself and your situation. You're unearthing hints to get to the core of who you are and what makes you happy and engaged. Often assessments are used in this phase that reveal your strengths, your values, and your interests. And so often we lose sight of these things. We overlook them, we forget them, or often we adapt to circumstances like our jobs, which don't always bring out our strengths. The second phase is called Light the Path. This is the visioning process, where you get to explore the dreams you have or didn't realize you have about your career, your community impact in your life. Out of this phase comes goals, or to use a different word, intentions, and the flexibility to map out possible iterations of those goals. The third phase is called Lift Your Feet. This phase is characterized by undergoing small custom experiments in your work or life in the direction of your desired growth. And it's typically complemented with learning and reflection, perhaps adapting your goals, and often meeting with other people who have traveled the path ahead of you. The fourth phase is learn to let go. That is, of what's holding you back. Said differently, you could think of it as leaning into the lesson that life is teaching you as you're undergoing some of these challenges. This phase is about seeing your reality clearly and owning your stuff, and that means not underplaying your role or exaggerating your control. For example, for a job seeker, it might be releasing the tension of the great human desire to control the timeline of when people respond to your inquiries and applications. I know that this is a small example, but I imagine some of you can relate to that. The fifth phase begins when you start to see the fruits of your labor. We count these as successes in all forms, especially small ones. Progress or success may look like hearing yourself communicate more effectively, witnessing yourself doing previously unimaginable things, or successfully transitioning to the next chapter of your life. Even when people are on the journey towards the big goal, there's often a new confidence that comes with investing in a more authentic and engaged life. Now that we've surveyed the 5 L's, let's dive into the first phase and talk about where you may be at with your career. If you're on this webinar, you may recognize that unsettling feeling of your career being on a plateau. You may feel antsy, or you have that nagging sense that things aren't right, or your learning curve has gotten flat. One thing to know is that career plateaus are normal. It's not who you are. It's just a way station on everyone's journey. Happens to all of us from time to time. So be honest with yourself if you're experiencing any of these things. Why do plateaus happen? So there's internal and external reasons for career plateaus. The external causes may be that the opportunities aren't there, or perhaps you want the opportunity but leadership has passed you up and you're stuck. And then there's plateaus that have more to do with your fit. You're probably good enough at your job but not interested enough, or maybe the job was a proxy. It got you to where you are, but it's no longer in alignment with where you want to be. Also, the interplay of work and your personal life can certainly affect forward motion. So John, let's take a poll to gauge where the participants are in terms of their urgency to change their current jobs.
All right. And I think some of you will see this quick poll coming up right now. And feel free to select an option. What is your sense of urgency to change your current job? 1, I don't need to leave anytime soon. B, I'm on the fence. And C, I need to leave within 3 to 6 months. We'll give people a few more seconds to respond. I see everyone's taking part here. Over 70% of participants here are taking it here. So we'll get a few more people taking this poll. It looks like pretty much everyone's done now, and now we'll share it back with everybody. And wow, pretty even Stevens across the board. 32% I don't need to leave anytime soon. 37% I'm on the fence, and 32% I need to leave within 3 to 6 months. So quite a variety of answers there, Leslie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty even across the board. And the note that I'd like to make on this is one mistake I see people make is waiting until they need to leave to start planning their move, or wait until they have already left to start planning their move, as opposed to looking down the road and getting some small actions in place. So when they're ready to leave, they're a little bit more teed up and ready to go. So this will be your first of 4 structured opportunities to self-reflect. So please grab a pen and paper, and I'll give you about 30 seconds to respond to the following prompt. Be honest with yourself right now. What are 3 or 4 words that best describe how you feel about your job or career path at this moment in time? And by the way, you're welcome to share your responses with the presenters via the questions box. I'm showing you an image of that now. And we'll share a sampling of the words coming in to give you a sense of the range. So I'm seeing some people are feeling limited, micromanaged, stuck, frustrated. Stuck has come up a couple times. Stagnant. There are some people that are excited and they're planning. Overwhelmed. Someone says it's time to explore. One person wrote, it is a dead end. Some people are not feeling valued or lacking connection to their true passion, overworked. And one person wrote their skills and energy are being underutilized. So I want you to know a range of emotions and outlooks is normal, and particularly those facing career transition. Or maybe you're in the midst of career transition. It's like a roller coaster. So no matter how you're feeling, just know that you're not alone. When I talk to new clients, often they tell me right away that they want to leave their organization. I ask why, and they give me 5 or 6 reasons right off the top of their head, no problem. And then I ask, what are you looking for? And this is often met with rambling or confusion or sometimes just straight up silence. The point that I want to make is the dissatisfiers, the things that are so easy to list about why you're leaving, tend to be relatively unimportant to the actual change. Dissatisfiers are going to exist in some form or another in all jobs. But the more important thing is that you have an idea of what you're moving towards. And a coaching colleague of mine, Katie Selby at Carlson, talks about this in terms of attracting people to your goal with positive energy versus repelling people with negative energy. By the way, if you're dealing with some pretty negative situations or feelings about your current job, which is, what your participation is showing, that's okay, and it's something to deal with. But just be aware that languishing in dissatisfaction will not move you nearly as far as the more productive energy of knowing what you want. So let's do an experiment. This will require you to pay attention to the screen. I'll flash some images on the screen for a short period of time and then immediately ask you a question about what you saw, which you can communicate to me via the questions box. So are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay, stop. How many donkeys did you see? Please type your answer into the questions box. This is funny. People are writing, I have no idea, no clue. Somebody wrote 15, somebody wrote 0, 3, 2, I have no idea, 12, lots of question marks. and Julie was looking for some cute animals, which I hope that she saw. Okay, so let's try this one more time. How many donkeys? Again, type your answer into the questions box. Oh, here we go. 88888, 98887889. There you go. There's 8. Good job, everyone. So the point is, it's easier to find something once you know what you're looking for. And further, the more refined you are at describing what you're looking for, the better you'll be at finding it. And perhaps you'll find more instances or iterations of it. For example, you might start out looking for 4-legged animals with hooves, but when you can label it a donkey, you can more easily differentiate it from its near relatives like horses. On a practical level, back to your own career development, this might mean knowing that when you have your next meeting with your boss or a mentor in your organization, to be able to describe the promotion you'd like to work towards, or the stretch opportunity that will help you develop some skills so that you can launch in a new direction. Careers move forward when you do your part. And in the career counseling biz, we call this planned happenstance, based on a theorist from Stanford. It's basically putting yourself in a position to get lucky. You're then ready for luck to happen. So in this example, you've prepared your thinking to see a donkey, and there you go. You saw it, and you saw it accurately. So I encourage you to continually be exploring and refining your idea of the next chapter of your life, rather than taking a wait-and-see approach and hoping you'll get lucky. So as a segue to phase 2, Light the Path, I'd like to hear from you. John, let's run the poll on our participants' career vision.
Okay, 1 second. All right, other quick poll here. Do you have a personal vision for your career? First, I have a fairly clear and detailed direction for the next 5+ years. Second option, I have a general sense or some specific ideas. And lastly, I have not thought about this or don't have a future vision. And we'll give a few seconds here for most folks to take part in this poll. Great poll participation, everybody. People are very engaged. And we'll just give a few more seconds. We got a few more votes coming in, looks like. All right, we'll close it, and now we'll share it. Okay. Far and away, 70%. I have a general sense or some specific ideas, with only 14 to 16% on the other options there, Leslie.
Yeah, it's not too surprising, actually. So the idea here is most people, at least on the webinar, are not going to have a neatly packaged vision statement. But most of you do have ideas, and this is your starting place. And if you don't have ideas yet, don't worry. I'll share some ways that you can tap into those just a few minutes from now. But first, let's talk about what happens when your career is not internally directed by self-knowledge or personal vision. In lieu of career vision, this is what most people do. They look at jobs in their organization or similar orgs. They look at their friends' jobs or jobs in their immediate network. And of course, they look at job postings online. And I don't have to tell you, you know, typically, it's pretty uninspiring. These methods aren't bad. In fact, they're really effective methods for understanding the job market and who's in your network. But these 3 methods are just incomplete. Going from your job to another person's job may get you out of your situation, sure, but fast forwarding, unless you get lucky, it may just be a different year, same problems, because it's not you, or not necessarily you. Taking a more intentional approach by knowing who you are and what you want gives you better data. For example, to ask the right questions with prospective employers such that you can make a more informed decision about your next move. To clarify, we're now on level 2, light the path. Level 2 is about starting with the end in mind. You need to know where you're going, first for yourself, but of course also so people can help you get there. What do you want to do? This is the question that freezes people starting in early adulthood. You all remember graduation season. That was scary. So relax. This process isn't about predicting the future, and it's not something to be perfected either. It's a rough way to get at your vision description or beacon. A beacon is a real-life example of what you want. So what you want to do is something that is usually always a 5 to 10 year out prospect. As you grow, you'll revise and build out the answer further. So let's start today with a small, simple question, and this is your next opportunity to reflect. What's one dream or idea for your career that's yet to be fulfilled? I'll give you about 20, 30 seconds to write out your answer. And again, you're welcome to share via the questions box. Okay, we're getting some responses coming in. One alum wrote a large overseas research grant and project. One person wants to start their own company. Somebody wants to make $100,000 in their career. Another wants to be a health advocate or a nutritional counselor. Another person wants to publish their writing with an accredited publisher. I see a couple of PhD responses. Actually, a number of them. And there's somebody who wants to achieve executive rank. Somebody who wants to work in a bilingual Spanish position. A great variety here. So hold on to this. And we'll be following up with this idea in the next phase of the process, and we'll come back to this answer that you wrote down. Now on to some methods for extracting your career vision. And don't worry about writing this down. There's a free guide on my website that describes everything that I'm going to talk about for the next couple slides. So here are some key questions that I use every day with clients to get their vision. Ideal job. I ask them, if you could write or compile your ideal job description, what would it look like? Fantasy job. If I waved a magic wand that enabled you full competence, any skill set or any educational work background, what jobs would you love to have or try? Or ideal future day in the life. So it's 10 years from now, you're living your ideal life. Pretend a video camera is following you around for a day. Write a detailed description, like a page or 2 description of what the camera might capture following you around. Okay, back to level 1, look deep. Here are some other questions that add value to career visioning. What are my strengths, and do I have the chance to use them every day at work? Who do I value? Is it achievement? Is it adventure? Is it beauty? Is it family happiness? And what if I rearranged my life in service of those values? What are the topics I could read or talk about all day long and never get sick of? What are the skills? And of course, what environments bring out my best? Let's talk about how you can bring this self-reflection and visioning into a workable form. You don't need to do all the exercises I just mentioned, but doing a few of them will help. Once you do a few exercises, look through your notes. What patterns do you see? Talk to other people, show them the notes, and say, what does this sound like? This is an iterative process. This will enable you to create a short-form vision or examples. We call these beacons that you can use to respond to the question, what do you want to do? What do you want to do is also known as your elevator pitch. So let's look at some examples of visions and beacons. So at the top, you'll see a graphic designer who has a new beacon as an instructional designer. Next, an HR manager who wants to focus on leadership and career development of young professionals, perhaps at a university, but possibly through shifting her role internally. And skipping down, you'll see a retired educator who's exploring small creative stores and enterprises, or how she can shape her current caretaking roles with greater authenticity and spirituality. Towards the bottom, you'll see a finance manager who wants to make a more dramatic career shift towards healthy eating. Some of these you'll see are iterations on current careers, and others are career changes. And even others are just cultivating parts of their personal life or hobbies. I want you to know retrospectively, having it all written out, it looks as if this process were easy. But all of these people took great intention, self-assessing, envisioning to develop their beacons. And although it took great intention, it didn't necessarily take that long. So try not to be overwhelmed with the process.
Now, Leslie, I just wanted to ask a question. Would you say that these beacons, are they limiting?
Great question, John. No. Beacons enable many possible outcomes. So if you think of a beacon as an intention or a working model, it helps. It helps. It's not something that you can fail at, so to speak. And it's in the next phase, once you start to road test it, that you'll realize the most likely or maybe economically viable option. So again, the beacon is just the working model. Thanks, Jeff. So let's take a breather for a moment. We've discussed the first two phases, and now I'm going to introduce the following three through sharing a story about one of my clients. My client, Tally, generously agreed for me to share her real name and story with you today. And I like her story because it illustrates how you can move through the process from dream career idea to concrete steps and in time find yourself in a place you only dreamed about, which is certainly where Tally is today. When I first met Tally, she was 4 or 5 years out of her MBA, working at a Fortune 500 paper products company in the Midwest. She enjoyed her jobs in supply chain and marketing, but for her, the industry and city left something to be desired. And she would tell you she was on a plateau. Interestingly, at the time, she was commuting to school in New York to become a graduate gemologist from the preeminent gemology school, the GIA. She had an unabashed crush on Tiffany's and a lifelong dream to experience New York in a real way. When I met her, this part of her life was completely passion-related and totally extracurricular, and she had very limited concrete ideas and probably even less certainty that these interests may connect long-term with her primary paid work. Tally and I worked together off and on for the last 1.5 to 2 years. I've laid her path out retrospectively, and FYI, for those of you who are looking at these boxes and starting to get anxious already, just know that some of these boxes you can't fill in until you're in the situation and living it. And that's why it's easier presented retrospectively. By the way, you're only seeing the path she took, not all the ones she contemplated. So to quickly walk you through this, phase 1, look deep. Tally had some major gaps. She had no jewelry industry experience and very little understanding or access to career information. Also, she lived in the Midwest. Phase 2, light the path. After some consideration about various paths, Tally hypothesized she wanted to be a marketer for a top-tier jewelry company like Tiffany's in New York. Phase 3, lift your feet. Tally did small things, like look up as many marketers or business professionals as she could at Tiffany's and their competitors to learn about what jobs exist. And she attended a jewelry fair in New York. Phase 4, learn to let go. She had to let go of many things, both small and big, tangible and intangible, in order to gain confidence over time as the puzzle pieces started coming together. She left her corporate job in the Midwest to pursue a bridge job, which was writing about jewelry, while she finishes school. And phase 5, live your potential. Tally is currently at a pretty exciting stage in that she has so much of this transition already behind her and has several promising options that will play out, actually, as we speak or over the next weeks or months.
Hey, Leslie, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I was just thinking participants may be wondering, are you recommending that people quit their jobs in order to pursue their dreams?
Oh, that's a great point. Thanks, John. Absolutely not. This is a case-by-case issue. And the way I talk about it or think about it, everyone's going to leave their job eventually. So sometimes it's less of a question of should I leave my job or if, but when. So leaving's an individual decision. You make it based on your circumstances. And staying can serve as staying in your job can be stabilizing and give you some financial security while you plan and build out your skills. Interim work may help you change or get out of your environment. And there is one downside of moving to a new job right away, especially if you're not ready to jump to the dream. It's then often 6 or 12 months before you can revisit some of the bigger goals or do training outside of work. But it's all okay, and it's all in the timing of your life that these changes happen. So back to Tally. What did Tally do really well? I think she knocked phase 3 out of the park. She took hundreds of small steps over time to create her reality. So let's talk about phase 3, lift your feet. So let's say you have your vision summary, your I want to statement, you've got your beacons or examples of outcomes. Then ask yourself, if I were going to be living this life 12 months from now or 24 months from now, what would I need to do to prepare? This is your personal development plan. So as an example, I have a client named Ryan who's currently in a large corporate role on the West Coast and has this idea. He wants to open a Japanese ramen quick service restaurant. So think Chipotle for ramen. When we chatted, probably 5 months ago, I posed this very question to him that you see on the screen. And after only about 10 or 15 seconds of thinking, he came up with a pretty decent list. He said he would make a trip to Japan to eat ramen and do some research, then practice in his own kitchen. He'd network and meet with people who own their own restaurants. He'd look for culinary partners. He'd gain experience in restaurant operations or talk to a lot of quick service restaurant owners and eventually quit his job. And I touched base with him last week, and guess what? He booked a flight to Japan for his 2-week ramen tasting mission. He's at the beginning of this journey, but he's on his way. I'm really proud of him. And nobody knows where this will go, but for Ryan, he's never going to regret the investment in finding out. Now it's your turn again. Thinking about the idea you wrote down during the last reflection, what's one step you could take to explore that idea? Thanks for your responses. I'm seeing informational interviews, talking to people who have been in similar positions, job shadowing, joining a writers' society, meeting with one network contact a week, joining a professional association, going back to school, taking classes, make some goals around publishing, exploring mentorships. Looks like a business person is looking to speak with local printers to get quotes for stationery and fine art prints, so something related to her goal. Yeah, a lot of networking out there. These are great. So when the rubber hits the road, it's where people tend to need more help in navigation. So let's troubleshoot some common issues with the lift your feet phase. So I seize up. This could be a fear of commitment or perhaps what you're committing to. It's important to remember that you always have the power to decide if it isn't right for you. But you may not know until you experience it, and that may be personally or vicariously. Like people were saying, informational interviews can teach you a lot. And a great result of an informational interview is it confirming that that's what you want to do. And a great result of an informational interview is that it confirms it's not what you want to do. It's all good. You can't lose. So another issue that comes up is people feel overwhelmed. They say, where should I start, or I'm not sure where to start. And this is not news to you. You've heard this before, but break goals into small, executable, time-bound steps. So we're talking 15-minute increments, 30-minute increments. There should be nothing on your task list that's greater than that level of increment. So very small. Ask yourself, what steps are most critical? And if you're anxious, just start with where you're most comfortable, or start somewhere. Things are going to become easier once you get your momentum going. This is always the case, especially with informational interviewing. They also say I'm not making progress, and sometimes this is true, and sometimes this isn't true. But notice the parts of this process that you engage, and notice where you're avoiding. And ask yourself, am I avoiding things for a legitimate reason? That is it not the right path for me? Is it not the right timing in my life to take some of this on? We're now segueing into phase 4, learn to let go. There's a lot of external goals that we've touched on so far, job changes, professional development activities, etc. And for this section, we'll focus on internal change. What habits or stories that you tell yourself no longer serve you? Most classically, many people in this phase have the opportunity to move from disparaging themselves to loving themselves, or from thinking that they can't do it to reminding themselves that they can. Sometimes it requires forgiving yourself or forgiving others even. All of this helps you adjust and be resilient in the face of career stress and pressure. And that's also known as emotional resilience. Research has found that a positive relationship exists between career satisfaction and emotional resilience. In fact, emotional resilience is one of the strongest correlations of all personality traits related to career satisfaction. So it's really something worth investing if you're looking for career satisfaction. Build your emotional resilience. So take a look at this page of mindset shifts. Which message will enable you to realize your dream or the idea that you've been writing about today? Take a moment to write it down. And if you don't see anything that resonates, write your own. So this is your final reflection exercise of the day. Finally, wrapping up with phase 5, live your potential. Let's talk about how you can measure success in this change process that often feels ambiguous and unwieldy. A small win is a concrete, complete, implemented outcome of only moderate importance. By itself, a small win is going to seem unimportant. But actually a small win, once it's been accomplished, forces are set in motion that favor another small win, and sometimes the next solvable problem becomes more visible, and often, I should say. Small wins are also stable building blocks. So if you recall Tally's story, she ended up quitting her job to pursue an interim life in New York. It was only after a series of small wins that she had the confidence to do that because of the stable structure she had built. And she would tell you that. In fact, I sent her the slides for this presentation a couple days ago, and she wrote me back and she said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe I've done all of this. It makes me realize how far I've come." And it's true. She said, "I would not have had the confidence at the beginning to know that I was going to quit my job, move to New York, but it's something that became clear the more she was in it and seeing the puzzle pieces come together." So you may be thinking, what about large wins? Big wins, they evoke actually countermeasures and altered expectations, and the research shows this, both that make it more difficult to gain the next win. For example, if you land your big dream job right away, you may feel a degree of imposter syndrome or wonder if your goal was too easy. Or perhaps you'll get the false impression that other things will come just as easily. A small win actually reduces importance and demands and raises perceived skill levels. So in other words, it creates the mindset, it's no big deal. It's just a small thing to be done, and at least I can do that. Here's some examples of small wins in career development or career transition. Completing any 15 to 30-minute task related to implementing your vision. Meeting with somebody whose job you admire for coffee. Drafting and sending the email to invite that person for coffee. Researching people or organizations that do what you want to do. Talking with your boss about your professional goals within the company, and more. I'm sure you have lots of ideas. But they're all small things. It's like 5-minute conversations, an email that you send. All of that counts. In your life, you may notice there are cycles of external and internal activity, and for good reason. When things are slow or you're on a plateau, being an internal cycle gives you the opportunity to incubate change. It may not look like much is happening, but think of it like a rocket on a launch pad firing up, but yet not yet released. Lots is happening. Executive coach Lynn Allen uses the analogy of a racehorse's energy building up at the gate. What would happen if the horse burst out before it was ready? It would be a false start. So similarly, don't leap out into your dream job prematurely. Take some time to look deep, get a vision, some beacons, and take small action steps. Finally, experiencing uncertainty about your career doesn't necessarily mean you're not on your path. There are many ways to be on your path, and I love this quote from the Dalai Lama, and I wanted to share it with you. People take different roads seeking fulfillment and happiness. Just because they're not on your road doesn't mean they've gotten lost. And I would argue the converse applies as well. Just because you're not on their road doesn't mean you've gotten lost. Sometimes you're on a plateau, sometimes you lose your bearings, and sometimes you feel the confidence of moving in the right direction, often before external signs may appear to others. Everyone's path is different and worthy of investment. This is your life. Before we move to questions, I wanted to share that I've created 2 free guides to complement this webinar. First, on how to boost your professional development, where I surveyed a small number of working professionals for ideas and advice. So there's about 4 pages of quotes of ideas and advice, as well as a cover page that shows a lot of different options, sort of categorized. And the second is a recap of the questions, both from Look Deep and Light the Path, that will help you spur your career vision. To be aware, the content of the guides will go into more depth, particularly the one in professional development, than what we had in the webinar. If you're interested in connecting or partnering with me, I would welcome that. Please visit my site, lesliemolder.com, to learn more about my services. Coaching calls are typically held over Skype or over the phone, and I do a free intro session. So fill out a contact form on my site to get started. John, I think we're ready to take some questions.
Okay, well, this is just a note from my colleague Erin Elliott, who's helping today on the production of this webinar. Feel free to flag any questions that are coming in, and participants, feel free to start typing in questions right now that you have for Leslie. One that we have coming in is, how do you go about listing references on applications without letting your current employer know that you are looking for alternate employment?
Yes, this is a great question and a classic question, because, you know, as you're planning and incubating your transition, you got to be a little sneaky at the beginning before you raise red flags to your manager, or your director, or your organization that you are on your way out. So, you know, first of all, you don't need references until you are in the final phase of interviewing. And so when your future employer asks you for the references, that's when you can confirm those references and let them know that it's happening. You can also ask those references to keep that in confidence. And it's also a good opportunity for you to gauge your level of seriousness about the opportunity that you're interviewing with, should you want to list your current director or boss as a reference. And, you know, people move on from jobs. Good managers, they understand that sometimes they lose their talent. and it's all part of the natural process of career transition. And so although it can be scary, when the time is right to tell your boss that you're thinking about moving on, or you've interviewed with an opportunity that you couldn't pass up, the opportunity to explore what's out there, they're tough conversations, but they happen eventually.
Mm-hmm. Another alumnus asks, where do people get hung up in the transition process, and where is there the greatest danger of giving up, and how do you avoid that?
Yeah. There's a couple places where people get hung up. I think some people who love the process of introspection, they can get hung up actually in overdoing the looking deep and the visioning process, because maybe they like that. Maybe it's aligned with their strengths. And so there is a point in time where you have to say, nope, let's start talking to people. Start, planning some coffee dates. And then the other place that people get hung up is in lift the feet. It's when the rubber hits the road, and you sort of have to prove to yourself, are you really interested in this? Or you have to get over some of the hang-ups of the first few steps, the hang-ups of, being naive. You're all very smart, intellectual people, but you're also naive when you start, and that's okay. And to be able to recognize that naivete, and if you don't know much about what you're moving towards, just let people know, I'm at the very beginning phase of the process. Okay?
Mm-hmm. We had one alum ask how many people joined us on the webinar today, and it was over 180 alumni and friends. So thank you for everyone for joining us, and we'll keep taking some other questions. Here's a good one. If you are trying to switch careers, how do you gain credibility in that desired field that you're wanting to switch into?
Absolutely. So I see there being sort of three things to know. The first is have an understanding of what that career is that you're switching into. You can do that through informational interviews. You can do that through research. It is really important to do some primary research with people who are in that field, because there's typically a language barrier when you're switching fields. You don't yet speak the language of the industry or the language of the company. You don't know how that job works at that company that you're targeting. And then you have to look back and be honest about where you're at. And between where you're at and where this beacon is, it's your opportunity to create the bridge. And that you can create that bridge a million different ways. Look at my handout, the guide that I wrote on professional development. It might be doing some interim work. It might be volunteering, picking up a second job, informational interviews. There's a lot of different ways that you can start to create that bridge. And sometimes you find, once you do an informational interview, I need to get a different master's degree in order to do this, or I need some major skill sets that I'm lacking. And so it's when you find out that you can't move forward into that, it gives you the opportunity to decide whether you want to make that skill set or that educational investment. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you want to, and sometimes you don't, and that's okay.
Where does one start? This is another question that has come in. Where does one start if you really don't have a clear industry or path or outcome at the top of mind?
Can you say that again, John?
The question is, where do you start if you really do not have a clear industry or path or outcome?
So where I would recommend where you start is with the questions that we went through today. There's certain people that are going to be less comfortable with intangible things. Like they want something that's really concrete. I want to transition into, to be an SVP at this organization by this date. And you don't always get there. Not that you don't get there, but you don't always start with that. You first have to sometimes define more vaguely. Or if you are a tangible person, you can start doing some job market research, like looking at job boards and looking at people's LinkedIn profiles to get those tangible examples of real jobs that exist today. Mm-hmm. And maybe people are in them, but they're not going to be in them forever, and it shows you that those things exist. So there's a lot of ways to tap into what that might be, and sometimes it just takes time to sort it out.
Sure. We have another alum write in that he's using sites such as monster.com, but finds the volume of unsolicited and unrelated job emails that he receives overwhelming. So what recommendations do you have, or do you have any favorites as far as job search sites or particular things that you found clients have success with or utilize?
Yeah. So, and this question always comes up because everyone's looking for the magic bullet. They want to know the best job site so they can make this process as painless as possible. And in some ways, it shows a little bit of denial about the reality of the process, or not wanting to experience some of the natural aches and pains of it. So when I coach people about a job search, which I used to do a lot more of at the University of Michigan, I talk about having a two-part process. So there's your long-term strategy of your job search and the short-term strategy. Long-term strategies are thinking and discerning jobs, organizations, and companies that are out there that have your dream job. Okay, so you might build out an Excel spreadsheet that has 30 or 40 organizations that have the types of jobs that you want. You might cross-reference that with who you know, who's maybe a University of Minnesota alumni at that organization, who you've talked to, what your motivation level is, and you can work through that list. And again, there's a great book called The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton out of Duke, and he talks about, or I think actually he might be out of UNC. He talks about there's 3 types of seekers. There's farmers. So the long-term strategy is farmers. You're basically planting seeds without respect to current openings and seeing what comes through because you're doing the networking. The other half of the strategy is short-term strategies. Steve Dalton calls this hunting and scavenging. Okay? So you have to do some things that will actually get you the opportunity. So that's dropping resumes and cover letters against postings. It's also with those organizations that you know that you want to work for or that have jobs like the one you want, checking their job boards a lot. So in regards to those types of job boards, people use Indeed, they use LinkedIn. I think any job board that aggregates a number of posting sites or a number of company pages is helpful. So I would say Indeed and LinkedIn are the 2 that I most recommend people use.
Sure. In the Twin Cities here lately, there's with Target and some other organizations that there's been some unfortunate layoffs, and so one alum writes in and says, "How do you go about actually landing a job after being laid off? What would be the first thing to do?" So let's say got laid off last week. For someone in that situation, what would be your advice to them?
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's a reality, especially here in Minneapolis. So if there's anyone from Target who's in that situation, or I imagine there are people at friends and family, I'm sorry to hear about all the layoffs that have been happening. So if you've been laid off, there's a tangible sort of active process that you could take, but there's also the psychological healing that's from that. And so you need to make room for both of those things in your life and to actually process the shock and the grief and the anger and the bargaining and all of those things that come with that sort of surprise. In terms of the job search, it does behoove you. Many times when people are laid off, they get some sort of severance package, not often as big as one might hope, but do take some time to retreat, be with people that you love, and start to use the opportunity to think big picture, okay? You always hear about, what makes people grow the most. It's out of challenging situations. So don't miss the opportunity by just jumping right back in at the first job that you see. So, this webinar isn't about how to set up a job search, but, in the probably 2 to 3 weeks after being laid off, it is important to get some of the steps together to know what you want and set up a job search.
Mm-hmm. Another question came in. Do you have any experience with someone making a major change to go abroad for a year, let's say going abroad for a year at a midpoint of their professional career, and what successes or challenges were there when they returned to the U.S.? So possibly any experience as far as people who go abroad for a period of time, either for a job or to get experience and then come back and
yeah. There's so many ways, John, that people can go abroad. With their current organizations, they might be moving to a different part of the world because of family or friends. I've coached somebody who moved to the Philippines because that's where his wife is from. And there's a whole transition process to being abroad. And sometimes it takes time. There's visas, there's work authorization issues, but then also it takes time to understand their local culture and do a job search the way people there do the job search. So there's a lot of cultural differences in terms of how people go about a job search. And when people come back, depending on what brought them and how different what they were doing was there, there's a whole range of experiences of re-entry into the U.S. and sometimes some reverse culture shock exists as well. But generally, it's not met with skepticism. Why did you do that? Generally, on a very human level, people are like, wow, good for you. That's amazing. That's really interesting. And of course, they want to know why, and they want to know what you did there. And if they're a future employer, they want to know that you were productive to a certain degree while you were there. But generally, it can be a very good thing and very re-energizing for your career.
Sure. And we'll do one more question. What are the pros and cons against, or what are the pros for or against leaving a current job to find an interim job that would allow for a better environment for reflection?
Yes. So if you're in a job, if I'm hearing this question right, this person's probably in a job where it's really intense, or they just have no spare time to be able to do some of these reflective things. And first of all, these reflective things can be done, by taking a day off a month and building it into your current job. But certainly, if you're going to be doing informational interviews and if you want to maybe do some training, having an interim job is a great idea. An interim job, one of the drawbacks is you're not sure how long you're going to be there. So it could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 3 years. You just don't know. And so finding an interim job that would accommodate that sort of thing. And I'm not advocating that when you're in the job interview being like, I'm not going to be here for long. But no, absolutely not. You never know. One never knows how long they're going to be in a job. So it's not necessarily the first thing that you would say in a job interview. But knowing that, can I get up to speed on this job? Is my learning curve on this job going to be flat enough? Or is it going to be easy enough such that I actually do have the time that I thought I was going to have? Or, like I said in the presentation, is it going to be 6 to 12 months before I can even start that because this job isn't what you thought? And there's always things that aren't what you thought at current jobs. So it really depends on where you're at and what this interim job could look like in a personal decision.
Leslie, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your advice and expertise. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better in the preparation for this webinar, and thanks for being a great alum and sharing some great advice today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, John.
All right. Well, thank you again to Leslie. We have some upcoming webinars, the final 2 for this spring, coming up on April 10th. We have a great presenter who's affiliated with the veterinary school here at the University of Minnesota talking about pet wellness. So if you or others that you know have a pet and want to really think about their lifetime care plan, this is going to be a good one. And then lastly, maybe for if we had any early career professionals tuning in today, we have a couple presenters talking about increasing one's odds for early career success, and all those future registrations can be found at our website noted here. But then also a lot of our other, or actually all of our career and life stage webinars, the recordings, the YouTube recordings, the links to those can be found on our website as well. And we have some great ones about goal setting, and we did one in February about a recruiter panel. So definitely check those out, share those with others as you see fit. And if you're on the web or if you're on social media, just a friendly reminder, follow us at UMN Alumni on Twitter. And also, we have a LinkedIn group. So Leslie was talking about LinkedIn. In our main group, we have nearly 29,000 alumni and friends of the university who are part of that network. It is definitely something that I would say people don't leverage as much. And so if you are on LinkedIn, join our LinkedIn group. Just search University of Minnesota Alumni Association, and if you go to our website, you can also find links to the rest of our social media. And in closing, members of the University of Minnesota Alumni Association have made new initiatives like this webinar series possible, so thank you to all of them. Because of our members, we can enrich the lives of alumni, support student success, and make a better University of Minnesota. So if you're not already Alumni Association member, feel free to join us at minnesotalumni.org/join. This is the conclusion of today's webinar. I thank each and every one of you for tuning in. And again, friendly reminder, we'll have this webinar recorded and hopefully up within a few business days next week. So check that out if you missed anything. On behalf of the Alumni Association, to all our alumni and friends, have a wonderful day.